So, a year or two after the release of AC3, The Kidnapping of Princess Arelina, TSR released AC8, The Revenge of Rusak, which is the sequel to AC3. As the module numbering states, this is actually an accessory module, not an actual adventure. It's actually designed to sell off the new 3D figures that come with it, which are dragon tiles. This set of 3D dragon tiles was actually designed to expand your wilderness adventures by providing you with trees, tents, and a small series of adventurers, a horse, and a cart. The actual adventure itself only takes up about 3 to 4 pages. Now, this adventure was actually designed by David Cook, also known as Zeb, who is pretty well known for being one of the lead designers of 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons and the creator of the Planescape setting. The Revenge of Rusak is an adventure designed for 4 to 6 characters between the levels of 7 and 9, and made so you can pretty much insert it into any sort of wilderness adventure your characters are currently in. Now, at these levels, you're looking at about expert level play, so this should be something that you should be able to throw into your adventures. It is relatively small, and there's only a few encounters inside of it. This adventure, unlike the previous one, includes a bit of backstory in it. Obviously, Rusak is still alive, and Princess Arelina is involved in it. However, the princess is now the last surviving member of an entire royal family due to a coup d'etat staged by the warden of the garrisons, a man named Ernst Ziegler. Now, when this coup d'etat actually happened, it was obvious that Ziegler's forces had magical assistance. It has in the backstory that Ziegler, while disposing of Rusak's body, actually decided to save him, and Rusak feels he owes Ziegler a debt. To repay this debt, not only did Rusak help Ziegler overthrow the previous royal family, but he is also helping Ziegler capture the princess. You may ask why he's capturing the princess instead of, say, killing her, just like they did with the rest of the royal family. Ziegler wants the princess captured alive because he believes that openly killing her will actually make her a hero in the views of the common people, where if he's able to actually capture her and disgrace her in the eyes of those same people, his rebellion will be seen more legitimate. Now, I should note that this adventure is supposed to take a few years after the original adventure, where the princess was a child in the previous one. She's supposed to be a fully grown adult in this one. And she's actually in the process of trying to form a rebellion against Ziegler. So, it's like Princess Leia in Star Wars. It actually even describes her as not being dainty and demure, but rather hot-tempered, commanding, and sharp-tongued. Which actually interestingly coincides with the fact that this module was released a couple years after The Return of the Jedi was released in theaters. The adventure is pretty linear, and it's almost set up in like acts. The first act actually begins with the players on a road hearing screams for help, or something that sounds like someone screaming for help. The players can't actually see what is happening due to it sounds like the screams are coming from around the corner. Once they make their way around the bend on the trail, they'll observe a wagon being attacked by 3 men on horseback. These 3 men are actually henchmen of Rusak trying to capture the princess alive. The princess is not alone, however, and there is a guide with her. However, the guide has absolutely no use in combat. The wagon is actually stuck in its current place because the 3 henchmen had placed a fallen log across the trail blocking their path. Now, the players should be able to easily defeat these 3 henchmen because they are not supposed to fight to the death, and they will retreat as soon as things start looking not their way. Should players try to chase down the attackers, it should be made extremely difficult, and they should be slowed down by the fallen log and other debris in their way. The 3 henchmen are supposed to get away, pretty much. Unbeknownst to the player characters and the princess, the entire situation is actually being observed by Rusak using Wizard Eye. Now, if these same characters were the ones that actually, killed Rusak before, Rusak will instantly recognize them and be enraged by seeing them. The princess, on the other hand, only has a 60% chance of recognizing the player characters who had saved her previously. Now, you as a dungeon master can obviously just make this happen if you want it to happen, and it makes it a lot easier for storytelling. However, if the princess does not recognize the player characters either because you rolled that 40%, or they are not the same characters, her demeanor towards the player characters is standoffish, but she will not refuse their help or disallow them from following her. If she is friendly with them, she will advise them that she's actually on a secret rendezvous to meet with the rest of the rebellion against Ziegler. With the first act done, we should probably actually go over the opponents for the player characters for today. Rusak is now a 14th level wizard who specifically prioritizes illusions. He's actually really good at it. There is also an 8th level thief called Philip of Maribone, who is one of Rusak's henchmen. Petrov, the 10th level neutral fighter. And Therov, the 9th level chaotic fighter. All of these characters are fully equipped with multiple magical items, and Rusak is pretty well decked out. Now, these 4 guys are going to be your main opponents for your player characters throughout the module. There is an encounter or two that does not involve these 4, but these are going to be the guys. If you only have between 4 to 6 level 7, 8 player characters, you might want to give them a little bit of extra help. Otherwise, these guys will make mincemeat out of them. Princess Arelinas is actually a 0 level character with only 4 hit points. This will be important later on in the video. This may end up working out poorly. Now onwards to the second act, which is supposed to happen 1 hour after they help save the princess. As they're traveling down the trail, they'll hear someone whistling from around the corner, and eventually a traveler will be observed walking towards them. The traveler himself will try and be as unthreatening as possible. He will actually introduce himself as Kilkenny of Loch Glenfirk. Now, this man is actually an illusion created by Rusak. Its entire reason for existence is to push the characters in the direction where he wants them to go. Should characters try to see through the illusion, if they're the sort, it's supposed to be made difficult because Rusak is like an expert level illusionist at this point. His illusions are pretty much on point. The only giveaways that should happen to the player characters is as the traveler stoops over to take a drink out of the nearby creek, the water droplets that come out of his hands will not make a splash or any sound. Everything else comes off completely normal to the player characters because of how well Rusak is at creating illusions at this point. Zeb has even created contingencies for the player characters if they happen to A, find out that it's an illusion. The illusion will disappear into thin air and Rusak will imitate the sound of an evil wizard laughing. Or B, the player characters are a bunch of murder hobos and kill the traveler just straight out, in which case Kilkenny will crumple and die after giving pretty much no fight and utter a curse upon them. It doesn't say it specifically, but I would say that this death isn't one of those ones where the illusion just disappears and goes away. It looks like an actual, peasant dying. Now, the illusion Kilkenny will advise the player character's party that the path they wish to go on is actually blocked by a landslide or the bridge blowing out, whatever you as the DM decide to do. And they should actually take the other road at the next fork in the road. And with that, Kilkenny ends up walking off and ends the second act. The third act is pretty much a random encounter. It's called the Fairy Ring, and in it is pretty much the characters are, going down the trail and they observe a group of mushrooms growing on the side, and someone, either the character with the most woodsman's experience or the guy that was with the princess, will point out that those are actually a delicacy and are an excellent source of food. Now, once the player characters actually pick one of the mushrooms, there is a new creature called a fungoid that is underneath of these mushrooms. And it will come out and attack the characters until it dies. The fungoid is actually a 10 hit die creature with an HP of 50. and it does 2 to 20 points of damage, and it's got 2 attacks. So this is a moderate encounter for the group, as long as they're not idiots. They shouldn't be that stupid at this point at their character development. And after that, the third act ends, and 3 hours later, the fourth act is supposed to begin, which is labeled The Fork in the Road. This is the part where Kilkenny had warned the characters about if they went down the path they were originally planning to go on, they'll find that a landslide or a bridge has been taken out and they can no longer take that path. Now, Rusak and his henchmen have actually flown ahead in front of the party to sort of set this thing up. Rusak is using his illusions again to either A, imitate the landslide or the destruction of the bridge, and his henchmen have cut down a series of trees to also make the path unbearable, or pretty much blocked for the player characters. Should the player characters actually reach the illusion will disappear, and at that point, if they go around it, this entire adventure's over, I guess. I mean, it doesn't really expand upon what you should do if the player characters do it. If it was me, I would just have the player characters be ambushed by the enemy party, probably that night as they go camping, and that'll be the final encounter involving Rusak for now. Now, should they actually go down the path that Rusak has sent them towards, they will find that a chasm that is about 100 feet deep blocks their path. Luckily for the players, there is a rope bridge that allows them to cross. Should the players test it, they will find that the rope bridge is sturdy enough for the wagon to cross it also. This is part of Rusak's plan. Rusak has actually made 2 of his henchmen invisible, and he himself, as the player characters are crossing the bridge, will create an illusion on the other side of the bridge of himself, and then he'll start casting spells, making it look like the spells are coming from that illusion, in order to get the players to try and head towards the fake Rusak. As the player characters approach the fake Rusak, the 2 invisible henchmen will begin sawing the ropes. It'll take them 4 rounds to saw the ropes and collapse the bridge. Any player characters that are still on the bridge when it collapses will either A, be moderately damaged by 4d6, or B, they will be very hurt by falling the 100 feet and taking 10d6 damage. At this point, with these characters, that actually has a decent chance of killing them, especially if they happen to be a magic user, in which case they're probably dead. I forgot to mention, between Acts 4 and 5, the player characters should have been able to rest at night, and during this rest, Rusak will not attack them because he himself needs to rest in order to recharge his spells. For those of us that are listening that have only played 5th edition, this is actually a pretty damning encounter. Unlike 5th edition in BECMI / Rules Cyclopedia, player characters do not regain all their health points with a long rest, and there's no such thing as a short rest. Player characters only gain 1 hit point per day of rest. So even with only the 4d6 worth of damage, it would take player characters, on average, 2 weeks to regain the health points lost on that. Unless magical healing is used, which makes clerics extremely useful in this edition, that would cut down healing probably to about 3 to 4 days rather than 2 weeks. Now, the 6th act is what I would refer to as pretty much the main part of this module. This is supposed to happen 5 hours after they get past the rope bridge. The player characters will run into an encampment, which is supposed to be filled with a bunch of illusionary people along with the 4 people that are Rusak and his 3 henchmen. The illusions are very well made and are able to converse with the player characters. However, should a player character touch them, the illusion will disappear. Thus, the 4 polymorphed actual people, Rusak and his 3 henchmen, try and explain to the player characters that they are just servants for the encampment due to the fact that the rest of the inhabitants are part of a small cult that doesn't believe in physical contact with others. Thus, the 4 servants must do all the contact for them. Rusak and his henchmen will actually do extremely well at covering what they actually want to do to the player characters, and they will try and convince the players to stay the night because they need extra safety because they've been having a dangerous trip so far. The player characters will actually be fed decent food and cooked venison, and treated well by Rusak and his henchmen. Now, as night goes by, and the player characters go to sleep, Rusak will put his final trap into play. Rusak and his men have actually created an illusion using like a staff of recording that shows Rusak kidnapping the princess. They will place this staff on the outside near the woods and play it so that the player characters, whoever's on watch, are able to see the princess being kidnapped. Rusak and the henchmen will then attempt to wake the player characters and tell them about what's going on, and all this commotion is actually supposed to wake the princess up from her slumber too. The henchmen have actually reverse pickpocketed the princess earlier in the day and placed an amulet of emotions in her pocket. Now, this amulet changes the appearance of the wearer depending on how their emotions are, and with the princess's attitude of being a hot-headed individual, the amulet will actually make her appear to be a monstrous version of herself. Whether that means she looks like a monster or she looks like a deformed version of herself, that's up to you as the DM to decide. However, it should be something that will force the players to confront her. And once she is attacked, she will immediately become frightened and scared, and that will also be reflected by the amulet. However, this is where the problem comes that the princess is a 4 hit point normal person. At levels 7 through 9, should a player character shoot a single arrow at her, it will have a decent chance of actually killing her. Now, should that happen, the book does not tell you what to do. However, I think of it as a legitimate way to end this adventure. I would have Rusak and his henchmen then begin attacking the player characters. They're still polymorph. They still look like just normal servants for the encampment. So, for this point, you could actually make it seem like the player characters have become the bad guy. Or you could even just have the henchmen and Rusak just sit there and look astonished as the princess dies, and have them return back to civilization and have them pass on details about how the player characters were the ones to have killed the princess. However, that is not the book's ending. The book ending has the princess becoming scared and frightened and turning small and mousy and having the player characters figure out that this is an illusion. Once this illusion is discovered and the princess is not killed, Rusak and his henchmen will then begin their attack on the player characters. Now, should the player characters begin defeating the 4 men, they will retreat to their hideout that is behind the waterfall. And that is the end of Act 6, and it goes onwards to Act 7, the hideout of Rusak. Now, on the way towards the hideout, as the player characters try and trail them, there is supposed to be a series of traps by the map that they have given with the book. However, if you don't have the book, just make a series of traps just like you normally would with any other sort of adventure. It includes pit traps, snares, logs blocking their way, spiked pit traps, and Rusak shooting spells at them from his hideout. Once the player characters enter the hideout, they will have their final fight with the henchmen. The first 2 henchmen they will run into will be the fighters if they happen to still exist, and these 2 will fight to the death in the entryway. Once they get past the fighters, the rogue that was one of the henchmen of Rusak will actually be hiding behind some crates and will attempt to backstab the characters and then run away as fast as he can. And the final battle will be with Rusak himself. Now, Rusak has actually prepared a dimension door spell for himself, so once things start looking bad, or once they open the door, Rusak will dimension door out of there to come back again. Seeing as how it has been over 30 years since this adventure was created, obviously TSR and Wizards of the Coast never created a sequel for this adventure. So thus it will be up to you if you wish to have Rusak return and fight the player characters. Now, I actually think that Mr. Cook had done pretty well with this adventure with the little amount of pages that he's got. It's actually pretty devious. It's a well thought out adventure, and there are a decent amount of interesting little surprises for the player characters. And the ending itself gives you, the Dungeon Master, multiple opportunities. It gives you a recurring villain that you can use in the future in the form of Rusak. It will allow you to be able to create an adventure based upon getting the princess back to the kingdom to defeat Ziegler and his enemy army. Even though it's designed almost as like a random encounter in the wilderness, this can actually spread onto an actual full-on campaign. For ratings, I would actually give this an adventure rating of 3 out of 5. It's pretty decent. It's like I said previously, it's a nice stepping point if you want to create a new branching adventure for the characters. You get the Rusak, the evil illusionist wizard that could be a recurring villain, and you could also have the player characters go off to fight Ziegler and defeat the evil new kingdom to return the princess back to power. Now for value, this one's only getting 2. Physical copies are ridiculously expensive on eBay, and as of now there is only a PDF that you can get for about $5 off of DriveThruRPG. For deadliness factor, I'll actually give this a 4. 4 out of 5. The enemies that the players will be facing off against are not only of higher level, but actually think pretty tactically and use many devious tricks in order to try and defeat the party. I actually like how it works out. Altogether, I'm giving this a 3.5 out of 5. It's not a bad adventure. It's kind of fun. Well, I hope this helps someone out there, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye.